Tiffany Castell, start out by introducing yourself.
All right, I am Tiffany Castell from the Toronto Police Service Homicide Unit. I'm a detective sergeant there, where I lead a team of homicide investigators. I'd say the best homicide investigators there are.
Oh, are there
Definitely.
going to be some other detective sergeants in homicide that are like going to call you on that? Are we?
Probably. My phone might be ringing already.
Okay.
They might
Okay.
sense that I said that.
Detective Sergeant Castell, there's something we need to address before we get into the real nitty gritty.
Oh, Tamara, you're going to put me on blast here. Okay, go ahead.
When we spoke on the phone, you were excited to meet me, right? And I was like, Tiffany Castell is excited to meet me? Like, who even remembers me? I haven't been on TV for a couple years. What? So let's just talk about that a little bit. You said, I'm excited to meet you. Why? Why are you excited to meet me?
Well, because I was recently at the Chiefs Crime Stoppers dinner, and you, who I thought you were, was the MC at the Crime Stoppers dinner. Now, in my defense, she too is a Tamara.
Well, Tammy.
She's a Tammy Sutherland, and not a Tammy Cherry. So I was like, oh my goodness, I was sitting at the table behind you and I wanted to talk to you because of like your crime stories and all this. And I'm so excited to talk to you, but you're not Tammy Sutherland. You're Tammy Cherry.
As excited, just not as excited, right? And that's okay. That's okay because Tammy Sutherland is one of my favorite people in the world. But I'm happy we got that out of the way before we actually jumped into the Zoom recording, because you would have been like,
that would have been very awkward.
Yeah. Like, who is this person? But anyway, yeah. So I said, you can call me Tammy. You would like fall into the ranks of my late grandparents and my auntie. Actually, both of my aunts call me Tammy. And then you said I could call you.
You could call me Tiffy, because my two grand aunts, and many people on my dad's side of the family call me Tiffy. So you're very near and dear to my heart if you call me Tiffy.
Oh, I love it. Okay, Tiffy and Tammy, here we go. But now you know the other detective sergeants in homicide from the other teams are going to be calling you Tiffy too, because they're going to be, yeah, okay. Okay, so Detective Sergeant Castell, like I said, I'm so pumped for this conversation because you just seem like such a remarkable woman. And just when we spoke on the phone for the first time a couple of weeks ago, like your enthusiasm for this job, for life, for the community is infectious. And so I'm excited to share that with the community. So let's go back. Because I know that you did not think you were going to be a police officer. Tell me about little baby Tiffy growing up in Toronto. What was your life? What did you think you were going to do?
Okay, so I grew up in the East End of Toronto, or some people would argue that it's not Toronto because it's Scarborough, but we're in a mega city, people. So Scarborough is Toronto. Let's just get that out of the way.
Okay.
Grew up in Scarborough, and growing up, I was an air cadet for many, many years, and I still have a lot of really close friends who I talk to this day from my air cadet days. And I always loved that kind of paramilitary or like drill, dress, deportment, that structure, rank structure. And I did really well in the air cadets, and really spent a lot of my formative years there. And I kind of give that way back foundation because kind of when I tell you about the story, you'd see that although I was never having any intention to be a police officer, that it was probably there all along the way and I was just ignoring it. So I went to the University of Ottawa and did my undergrad there, a Bachelor of Social Sciences. And when I was nearing the end of my undergrad, I had not yet finished, but I applied for a job at Scotiabank, just randomly. I don't know, I thought it was like the grown-up thing to do, like apply for a full-time job. So that's what I did.
Like working as a clerk, like a bank teller?
No, so I was working in the electronic banking contact center. So that's like when you call and you have an issue with your debit card or you want to make like a balance transfer, that's sort of what I was doing on the phones. Mm-hmm. So I got that job and I came back and was sort of like living out of my suitcases, back and forth, finishing my final exams, but I still had a few courses that I needed to finish to actually graduate. Mm-hmm. So I worked at Scotiabank for a few months. And I was like, this is fantastic. The environment's so amazing. It was super supportive and lots of fun. But I was like, what am I going to do with my life? this is not what I want to do forever. Like, this is great for right now, but not forever. So I decided at that time, sort of fell into it and was like, oh, I think I'll just apply to the Toronto Police Service. Now, how did I get there? So I'll back it up. When I was in university, I ended up working loss prevention at Sears when Sears was around and, you know, vibrant and still.
Sears was a thing.
Sears was a thing. So I worked loss prevention at Sears. So I spent a lot of time interacting with the Ottawa police and met a lot of great police officers who were always telling me, you should apply, you should apply, you should apply to become a police officer. And I was like, no, I don't think so. All growing up, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer or a teacher, especially a teacher. That was like the really big thing. So
let's just pause there though, because growing up, like, what was it, do you think, about policing that made you not consider it? Like you said you grew up in Scarborough. Like, did you have any interactions with police, positive or negative? Did you have an opinion on police? Like, what was your perception of police when you were a little kid?
So I didn't really have much interaction with police officers when I was growing up. I had some friends who had interactions, and they were not always the greatest interactions. But even still, it didn't really taint my opinion of police one way or the other. I didn't really think about policing much because I just really wasn't interacting with police officers. And I also never really considered policing as a career because I didn't see any kind of role models or people. I was like, okay, that's someone who's like me, maybe looks like me or has a similar personality to me, that would make me think that that's a place for me to go and apply in a type of career that I would be interested in. So it just never really crossed my mind. Military did very much, even to the point where I considered going to the Royal Military College and just ultimately decided to go and do this Bachelor of Social Sciences because they had a really great social sciences program and criminology program at Ottawa. And that's the direction I went. So it was pretty neutral. Like I didn't really necessarily have good or bad interactions. I just had no real interactions and also no real examples. And it was sort of similar when I was in Ottawa that I had great interactions with the officers that I dealt with. And like I said, they were always encouraging me. And I actually had a very close friend of mine at that time whose older brother had gotten onto the Ottawa Police Service. So there were kind of like these two parallel things going on. I was working for Sears and everyone there, all those police officers are telling me you should apply. And then her brother was like, oh yeah, you should totally apply. And I was like, no, I don't think so. Which is probably, anybody who knows me will probably tell you, Tammy, like that is very typically me, right? Like you're telling me I should do something and I'm like, no, not doing it just because you're saying.
So if people would have said like I say that to my kids when they're near their grandparents, like my 3-year-old, do not give grandma a hug, do not. And then he goes and gives grandma a hug. So that was you.
That's me. Yes.
So somebody would have told you, do not become a police officer. You would have said, I'm signing up.
Yeah. What do you mean I can't do it? Of course I can. And of course I can. Right. Yeah. So the officers there and my friend's brother were encouraging me about policing. And one, I can't remember who it was that suggested that I apply to Ottawa Police had a summer student program. And I decided to apply for the summer student position. And I was working in their, what they called quartermaster stores. It's like where you hand out the uniforms and equipment. So I literally was dealing with really lovely people that I worked with and also lovely officers that would come in every day and were just so happy to like get their equipment, right? Like I think about even now, anytime I go to stores, it's like Christmas because you're getting new, right? So everyone was always really lovely and
a hat for you, a uniform for you.
Exactly. And I'm Santa at that time giving this stuff out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I worked in the quartermaster stores. I even went on like a ride along with the ETF, like did all kinds of things.
Wow.
And imagine after that, I still was like, no.
Really?
Yeah, I still just.
Was there anything that turned you off from it? Or you just were like, no, you're still on your path to law or education or maybe the military?
Not at all. I don't know why I wasn't thinking about it in that way. And like I said, I spent time in Air Cadets and then I was working loss prevention and like I was doing criminology and taking all these like police and society and law and order type courses.
The walls were closing in.
And I was like not seeing them, right? And like I said, so I get to Scotiabank and decide that this is not kind of like the forever career for me. and just sort of almost on a whim, decided to apply to the Toronto Police Service. And, I had gone through all of my testing and everything. And I should, full transparency, I went through the testing and I didn't pass my physical the first time. And I was absolutely like beyond devastated because, like I said before, I'm very much like, you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to show you. So when I really felt like such an abject failure, not having, been able to pass, I felt terribly and was like, okay.
What was it? What was it? Was there one thing in the physical that you couldn't overcome?
So I recall specifically, there's this really heavy dummy that you have to drag, and he had these huge, thick wrists that I, for whatever reason, just could not get a proper grip on. And probably it was a combination of not being able to get a proper grip and just not having trained and been, I don't know if it's strong enough or not having had the proper technique or a combination, and just couldn't get it done in the time frame that was required. So like that totally knocked the winds out of my sails. And I was like, okay, my policing dreams are over, like back to teaching or law or like something else. But that didn't last long. And I, got myself a trainer and worked really hard. And then when I went the next time, I passed without an issue. And very, very quickly, I applied and went through all of my interviews and everything like that. And I even remember going down to headquarters to like, it seems like such a different place. I work there every day now. But at that time, I had, fixed up my hair and put on my pantsuit, probably the only one I owned at that time. I have like 30 of them now.
Yeah.
Every day. And, like, I think it was about 6 to 8 weeks after I applied, I was hired. And then in December 19th, 2006, that fateful day, I showed up at what was our police college, which is now COBIC, or was COBIC College, but now the Toronto Police College. I was lucky.
What's COBIC College? What's that?
Okay, so COBIC College was the college, our police college, before the Toronto Police College, as you know it now, down at Lakeshore and Islington.
Yeah, but so was it specifically for Toronto Police, or was it?
Yeah. So it was exactly like our TPS college that all the recruits go through now. But this one, I think, was at Brimley and Finch area, if I'm remembering correctly. So it was in Scarborough. So I was really lucky at that time, living in Scarborough and just driving to Scarborough.
Yeah, because that would be a much different commute going from Scarborough to south of Etobicoke.
Yeah, and everyone on the job now says, "Oh, all of you East End people had your time. It's time for the West End people now," because now I have to drive all the way to Lakeshore and Islington if I have to go to the college, right? So yeah, so that was that fateful day. I started in policing, and it's like 15 years later, into my 16th year now, here I am at Toronto Police Homicide, which is, as a DS here, beyond my wildest dreams. Yeah, completely beyond.
It's incredible that 15 years into your career, you are a DS in homicide. Like most members of the general public probably wouldn't appreciate just how big of an accomplishment that is, but it is huge. So what do you think, like 15 years later, did you make the right decision? Are you happy that you gave it another go?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like at the time I didn't see myself doing this. And now it's like, I almost can't see myself doing anything else. And I've been so fortunate, like in the short time, what I think is a short time, or at least it's flown. I've been at 4 different divisions, 2 different squads. I've been promoted twice. So I've really just not stopped moving and not stopped doing anything different. And we're so privileged to have that opportunity, not only in a police service, because most people in any profession don't have that opportunity, but in many other police services, they're not as big. So there are not as many opportunities to move around your organization. So I've been so fortunate to have some great people along my path as well. Because homicide, early on, I did kind of want to try homicide, but it wasn't like homicide is what I'm after. Or, I did some drug work, did youth and family violence, general investigative work. And a lot of that came by some great people along the way, identifying things in me that I had not identified in myself. And me kind of just trusting and respecting them so much to say, okay, they kind of think that I might be good at this. So okay, let me just see, and let me just try not to mess up their reputation by working really hard and doing a good job because they vouched for me to go
What
to
sorts
work.
of things? What do you think it was that they saw in you?
You know what? Sometimes I ask the same thing, and maybe it's, like when people give you positive feedback or compliments, sometimes it's hard to really like take in and accept, like, wow, you really think that way of me, or that you're identifying that I have this capability or competence that I'm not identifying in myself. So I guess something that people will say is just like, especially in homicide, just compassion and empathy, and like really leading and investigating.
Oh, you just cut out. You just cut out. I don't hear any sound. Where did your sound go?
Am I back?
There you go. You're back.
Okay, good,
You're
good.
back.
All
Okay.
right,
So,
sorry.
so empathy and compassion, pick it up from there.
Yeah, so empathy, compassion, just that sort of leading and investigating with care and keeping people at the center of everything I do, whether it's from a leadership standpoint or from an investigative standpoint. And also, I think in everything that I do in life, personal and professional, it's just being relentless in the pursuit of whatever it is that I want, and relentless in the pursuit of excellence in all realms. So I think that's generally speaking what people sort of comment on. And when you have that type of work ethic, then people are like, I can teach you the skills, I can teach you, you can get the experience. But sometimes that relentlessness and that drive and that real kind of human connection and compassion is not always something that you can teach, or it takes some time to develop. But if you have it innately, then it takes you really far.
How important is that empathy and compassion in all forms of policing? Because you've done a lot of different things.
It is, I think, the number one thing, right? The absolute number one thing. I try to, in everything that I do, center people. So I think that when you have a very technical job, and sometimes policing can be very technical, there's lots of policies and procedures and processes and things that we have to follow, that we can get caught up in focusing on that and forgetting that at the center of all of this, and at the center of what we do and the reason that we do it, is people. It's our communities, it's our society. And I think everyone's probably heard we police by social contract, because our people allow us to do that. So when we sort of put them off to the side and center our processes and policies, we really lose those little moments that we build trust or build connection. Like sometimes I may be the only police officer that someone comes across. Or when I think about in homicide, like this is the absolute worst time in someone's life. Like me delivering the news of them having lost a loved one at the hands of someone else, and now asking them to trust me and to trust my team to do what needs to be done to investigate it and seek justice for their family. It is a responsibility that I take so, I can't, like, when I say take so seriously, like that is an understatement, the understatement of the century. Like I really grasp how significant that responsibility is. And the only way to really, in those times that I'm tired and I've been working, 36 hours in a row, and which is very common in a homicide, maybe 36 hours straight. And then I come home and sleep for a few hours, and then I'm going for another several 16, 17-hour days in a row. It's that keeps me going. And it's that I try and instill in those around me and my team, that people are at the center of absolutely everything that we do in every corner of policing, no matter how technical.
That is, like, everything you're saying is resonating so deeply with me. And like, I think I told you before, I do a lot of work with trauma survivors, and I can really relate to that, that heavy load. But the thing is, like, if you were to take that empathy, that compassion out of your job, you could still be very good at your job, and it would probably be easier on you mentally, I'm thinking. So how do you cope with that, having that extra, I don't want to call it a burden, because I don't think that you would agree that it's a burden, but that load that you're carrying, because as soon as you center the people, it becomes very personal, and that's very, very heavy. So how do you carry that load, or are there people that help you carry that load?
For sure. It can be heavy because I have a hard time throwing my work phone to the side. I try my best when I'm on vacation to actually set it to the side. And anyone who I know that I'm communicating with regularly, family wise, maybe a more recent case, I try and give them the heads up that I'm not going to be as responsive as I normally am so that they know sort of what to expect. But generally speaking, I find it really hard to disconnect, right? Because I feel like I'm some people's only lifeline, and sometimes they just need that little bit of conversation or just that response back to know that you're there. And that's kind of, maybe that text message is the only thing that sort of tethers you until you come to a preliminary hearing or a trial, if we are fortunate enough to have solved the case. And sometimes it's just reaching out and connecting when we're not able to solve it, right? So I'm very lucky to have a wonderful family, very close, deep connections with my family, and some really close friends who allow me to just be Tiffany in all of my like weird, wild, wonderful, eclectic self. And I really try to root myself in things that are not all policing. You know, not all of my friends are police officers. I don't eat, sleep, live, breathe policing. I eat, sleep, live, breathe policing when I'm working and in doing my work. But outside of that, I try my best to like connect with nature and just be out and enjoying myself. I have a 4.5-year-old son. So now I'm discovering the world kind of over again through his eyes, which is so exciting. And he's just like full of life and full of personality and teaches me so many lessons on a daily basis, just to take time to like listen and connect and talk and really celebrate, you know, like 4.5-year-olds, 4 or 5, anyone at that age, like they literally celebrate everything, especially themselves. Right? So that is a life lesson that I take, and I'm reminded like what I'm doing it for. And I think what also helps to keep me going is that in talking about my son, I want him to see that me as an example, you know, of the women that and women that he can see in society and expect and respect and really feel proud of me as his mom. Right. So these are all kind of the things that help to keep me going and help to keep me grounded. And when I get weary and tired, kind of help to keep me going.
I love that so much, because as we discussed off camera, like when we had our phone call a couple of weeks ago, I hate bringing up this topic specifically with women because it's always such a woman focused conversation when it should be men and women. But I was telling you, like when I was a reporter, and I would usually be gone from, you know, I'd be away from my kids anyway, from like 7:15 in the morning till 7:30, sometimes 8 o'clock at night. And I remember so many times like driving across the 401 to Ajax and like tears streaming down my face, looking at the clock, knowing, you know, they're having dinner now. Now it's like, you know, bath time, now it's story time, and then getting home and having my husband like holding my son like awake in front of cartoons so that I can feel like I'm like present for part of it. And it's hard, but the fact, like what you just said about that, like what your son can expect in women, like that's amazing. And I kind of wish that I would have been thinking about that too. But does it get you through those like guilty days? Like, you know, mom guilt is such a real thing. And you have to, you know, you are so dedicated to your son, to your family, but you give so much of your heart to your job and to the homicide survivors that you work with.
And I think, you know, I have to say that I didn't come to this place on my own. Like I was exactly like you, just an absolute disaster, like feeling so guilty. Even when I got accepted, you know, you applied to come to homicide and you're interviewed. Even when I got accepted, it was almost like I was super excited, but also very, very nervous about what that would mean. And I really was like, you know what, there's no way I can do this. Like, I need to wait until my son is much older. You know, once he gets to the age where he's like, whatever, mom, and he has his friends, that's when I can proceed. And, you know, it was really my aunt who I credit as being so instrumental in encouraging me and just saying, like, you absolutely can do anything that you want to do. And you need to know that you taking care of yourself and advancing yourself is supporting your son. And it is showing him that you're a working mom and you're out there and you're doing things. And, you know, like this is this is who you are and that's okay. And she said, no matter what age he is, have conversations with him, let him know. And this is exactly what I do. I say to him, you know, mommy's not going to be here tonight. I have to go catch my bad guys. Or mommy's not going to be here tonight. I have to do this. And he's gotten to a point where, like, exactly like I talked about, what he can expect. He sort of knows what I'm doing. And when I'm with him, I am very present. So we do have that deep connection and, you know, really loving, playful, fun relationship. But he also recognizes that, you know, I have a job to do, and that job supports the things that he wants to do. And I also task him with his little jobs, you know, like, you need to pack up your toys, you need to practice your writing, you need to practice your sight words, whatever it may be, because I have a job and you have a job, and we all have to do our part in our family to progress.
What does he understand about the job that you do?
So I've never really talked to him. I'm always very, like, protective at this age. He's going to school in September, so I know I'm going to lose all control over what comes in his ears, right?
Yes.
Right now, he only really listens to me and he watches barely any TV, so I've got total control.
Total censorship.
That's right. But he knows I'm a police officer. He knows that I don't work in uniform. And I don't talk to him about it being homicide work, you know, that someone's killed someone else, because I'm not really prepared to try. He's a why child. I think all kids at this age are sort of why. And I don't know that I'm prepared to answer 5 layers of why about someone killing someone else, right? So I really don't have those types of conversations with him, but he knows that I investigate and that I work very hard and that I catch people who hurt other people. That's kind of the general, what I break it down to for him. And he's like, okay, good. I'm satisfied with that.
He must be really proud of you. He must think that you are like the coolest mom.
Oh, I like to think so, and I hope so. And I'm hoping that he's going to think that forever and ever. Right now, I'm like the center of his world and the only woman he loves. I know that will change eventually, but I'm not trying to think about that day coming.
You should put, I know you said he knows you don't work in uniform, but you should put a cape on anytime I'm going to work with my cape. I see the signal.
That is
the
totally
Tiffy signal in the air.
Totally me. So yes. Thanks for that suggestion.
Okay, so I want to go back though to the beginning of your career, because you said you were fortunate enough to work in a bunch of different divisions. So where did you start out?
So I started at 54 Division, which is in East York. And then I went to 52 Division, which is downtown, Dundas and University. And then I went to the drug squad from 52. And then I went to 55 Division, which is in the beach. Not the beaches, because I learned it's the beach.
You know what? One of your colleagues from Homicide, who is also part of this, referred to it as the beaches the other day. I just let him have it.
Okay.
Detective Trevor Grieve, you can call him on that. I'm like,
I am going to talk to him about that.
But
no, I work there. I know it's the beach.
He worked there too. He did lawn bowling with the seniors down on the boardwalk.
Forever, and he's calling it the beaches. We're going to talk about that next time we're in the office. So I worked in the beach, and that was like so much fun. I worked in the community response unit and had a phenomenal team and rode my bike around all summer and down by the water. It was like such a wonderful, wonderful time in my career. So after that, I was promoted and went to 51 Division. And at 51 Division, that's at King and Parliament, King and Brent area there. And I was on the road, so I did road supervision. Then I went to our general investigative unit, which is the Criminal Investigative Bureau. So kind of the generalist investigators. And then I went into a little bit more specialized investigations at the division and the Youth and Family Services, which is domestic violence, sexual violence, elder abuse, and child abuse. And then I went to Homicide, where I've been ever since.
Did you start in the training program? Or no, that's for constables, right? Like you would have already been a sergeant or detective. So you actually, did you start in Homicide full-time then?
Yes. So I started in Homicide full-time as a detective, but it's interesting you bring that up because when I was in 52 as like a 2 or 3 year police constable, I went in for my annual evaluation, and you have to put down like your kind of like short-term goals, long-term goals. And one of my goals was to go to the 1 year homicide training spot. And I remember I think he was an inspector at the time saying, you know, Tiffany, only our best and brightest go to homicide. And I was like, okay.
Yep.
Challenge accepted.
Yes, I love that. It must have been because they haven't always had that 1 year training spot in homicide, right? It must have been like pretty new at that time. Or am I misremembering?
Sure. I'm not sure. I know it's been around for at least as long as I've been on the job or close to
Okay.
it. But I would imagine that it probably hasn't been around, forever, but
Mhm.
probably sometime before I came on, they
Mhm.
started that.
So you
Um,
showed them then you're like, I'm not going in as a constable. I'm going in as a detective.
and then
Okay.
a
Best
detective
and brightest.
sergeant.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So anybody listening to this, like you have said 51, 52, 54, 55, 53. I think maybe someday you'll be back there as an inspector, who knows, with your next promotion. But everybody might think, like 5 district, downtown, really like central, east, Toronto. It must be very similar, but those are 4 very different
Different
divisions.
divisions. Yeah. Very different.
You've got the entertainment district in 52 and other like little pockets that get a lot of activity. 51 division, totally different issues.
Mhm.
Like, what was that like for you getting the exposure, not just to all these different divisions, but such different neighborhoods and communities?
Um, you're right. They are very, very different divisions, both internally in terms of culture and then just
Mm,
geographically
mhm,
very different. But I'm kind of like, I like to say like a woman of the people, like anywhere that I'm going, no matter who it is, where they're from, what they're up to, I just love to talk to people and hear their stories and listen and connect and understand. So anywhere that I went, no matter what the division is, that's kind of like always been my thing.
mhm,
But 51 division is just like such a busy, busy, busy division. And you have the homelessness,
mhm,
addictions issues, a lot of mental health calls, a lot of kind of like the combination of the three.
mhm,
So there are a lot of really unique needs downtown.
mhm. A
Um,
lot of poverty too. I mean,
Lots of
yeah.
poverty and just a bit of a transient population too.
Mhm,
I'd say a bit more in 52 than 51, like the
mhm,
transient population, but still very much people coming downtown for work and
mhm,
then leaving. So it was really unique in that way. And it's very compact downtown,
right.
particularly like 52 and 51,
Mhm,
really small divisions, but very, very dense.
mhm,
Lots of calls for service, really busy. So it was a really great place to go. I got promoted. I think I had 8-ish years on when I got promoted. So I think that was a really important and sort of formative time for me in terms of becoming a supervisor, and just navigating just a really busy place with
mhm,
all of those unique needs. And I kind of feel like, okay, like I survived 51 as a new uniform sergeant and
mhm.
detective and all of that. So I'm like, okay, where do you want me to go now?
You can
I'm
throw
gonna
me anywhere now. Yeah,
be anywhere now. Um,
exactly.
and then like I talked about 55 being having the beach and the
Mhm,
water and Leslieville and just like
mhm,
some really cool and trendy. I think that's very me, that kind of like
mhm.
eclectic mix of different things that they have going on
Expensive
down.
strollers moving along Queen Street. Yeah,
Great food, great brunch spots, great plant shops as I see
yeah,
your plant in the back there. I
yep.
feel like as I say that, like I have a million plants here. I should have just like
Oh,
around me so well you can see all of my.
I have millions of plants too, but if I were to move my camera around, you would see the disaster that is having 3 young children and rushing them
Yeah.
out the door every morning. So, okay. So, um, we've talked about your policing. Love it, love it, love it, love it. But you've also been like very busy outside of your job with your
Mhm.
education. Tell me what you have done academically and why that has been part of your journey.
Okay, so I did a master's of arts and leadership at the University of Guelph. I graduated I officially got my degree in February of 2021. So I finished my coursework at
Mm.
the end of 2020. So that was a Master of Arts in Leadership.
And why?
And
And why? Why? Why did you want to do that?
so a couple of things. There's kind of like the professional and academic development part of it, and then the family part of it. So I'll kind of tell you about that first. So my mom was the first in my family to graduate university,
Mm.
like to get a post-secondary education, and she did so with 3 kids.
Wow.
including like my youngest brother who was on her hip at the time of graduation. And I have the picture
Wow.
from her grad, right? So he would have been like probably 2 at the time. And also was very, very young, both my mom and dad, very young parents, and also both immigrants to Canada, one from Trinidad and one from Jamaica.
Mm.
So my mom would always tell me, things are to get better with each generation and that I have a responsibility to progress our family's legacy. So part of doing that is through education. And that was also always something that was instilled in me as very, very important tool of social liberation and just personal development, and something that no one can take away from you. So I felt a responsibility to get my master's from a family legacy standpoint.
And what did that mean to your mom?
Sadly, my mom was not here
Mm.
to see that and to see me graduate.
I'm
But
sorry.
certainly, that's okay. Thank you. But certainly, I know that she's always present, and there's certain things that happen in my life, regardless of sort of what you believe. I definitely believe that she's watching over me and helps me along the way to do everything that I do and everything that I accomplish. Right. So
You must
although,
have felt her that day in February when you graduated.
oh, for sure. And thanks to COVID, there was no actual graduation. So I spent 2 years like reading every word in every academic journal and obsessing over my papers and everything, only to not get to cross the stage.
So you're like,
But
I got to do something else.
exactly.
So what are you doing now? That's why you want to do more? Is that why?
Well, I think I'm just crazy, and I let my master's research supervisor talk me into doing a doctorate
Wow.
somehow. And that's what I'm doing now. Tammy, I am at Western doing a doctorate in education and educational leadership. And every day I'm like cursing that master's
Oh,
research advisor.
yes.
Very early in our master's, like, yeah, this would have been my final semester when I was putting together my master's research or my final research project. I think in like our second conversation, he's like, okay, so like, are you going to do a doctorate? And I was like, no, actually, I will not be doing that. And we don't need to talk about it anymore because I'm not doing it. And he's like, okay, we'll get back to it. Don't worry, we'll talk about it. And then as things progress, he's like, oh, just talk to this person who's in this program. She'll just give you an idea. Like, she'll just give you an idea. And of course, I talked to her and I'm like, oh, okay, fine. I'm going to apply. They definitely are not going to accept me. So then I can just put the whole thing to bed. Well, then they accepted me. And now I'm like almost complete my first year and basically flying by the seat of my pants. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's going pretty good so far.
How do you like over what span, like how many years do you think it's going to take for you to finish this?
So it should be 3 years, but I'll go through all of my summers. So I guess it would have been 4 years if I didn't have summers. So yeah, it will be 3 years. So September will be 1 year complete. And then I have two more years to go.
So I thought you were going to say it should be 3 years, but I'm actually going to do it in 5 because I'm a full-time detective sergeant in Toronto Police Homicide and Missing Persons unit, but you're actually doing it faster. Like that is incredible. What's your area of focus in your PhD? Like, what are you studying? What has you so interested that you are like living this crazy life right now?
So I think there's kind of a combination of things. So again, I'm really taking that progressing my family's legacy to heart. But what I discovered through my master's, because a lot of people will ask me, did you do it to get promoted? Like, did it give you like an edge to do whatever it is? And what I always say is that for me, I felt very transformed through the academic process. So just the reading and writing and critical thinking and coming to a place where I was confident to leverage my professional experience to kind of layer alongside the academic literature to develop different strategies and arguments and explanations for different leadership problems of practice. And it's like when you're an undergrad, no one kind of wants to know your opinion on anything. They want to know what you can read and research and put together to submit, right? And then when you go into the master's level, there's a little bit more of your opinion, especially in an executive type program that's geared toward working professionals. They really try, especially at Guelph, they did an excellent job of prioritizing both the literature and theory as well as your professional practice. So then you kind of get into a place where you're like, okay, I'm not an expert on the literature and the research, but I am an expert in my field or my particular position. So once I kind of gained a little bit more confidence, because I kind of went through my entire master's thinking like, how did they even let me into this program? Like they're going to find
who is that person though? You were the do you think it's because you didn't pass your original physical exam with Toronto Police? Like, is that what, did that ruin you? Like, did that ruin your confidence?
I'm not sure. For some reason, it's just like that for me. I'm like, okay, this is going to be finally the paper that I'm going to submit. And they're going to be like, nope. Okay, we finally know why we shouldn't have let her into this program. I don't know why.
Imposter syndrome. Hashtag imposter syndrome. It is real.
Definitely. Imposter syndrome is 1000% real. And I am like the poster child for it.
We share the poster. Okay. We're side by side.
Well, thank goodness I'm not by myself.
Oh no, God no.
But yeah, so I went through my master's and then I kind of just found myself being hungry for that, the research and like just seeing that I had the ability to really make some significant changes by being an individual who can kind of stand in the gap. Because I think a lot of the times you have like the policing experts, like the people who know policing, like it is, like I talked about, a technical job. It's something that you're not going to really know if you're not doing the job and haven't done it for a long time. And then you have sort of the academics who study everything and have the expertise in the literature and what the research says. And then when you kind of bring the two together, they don't necessarily connect all the time. They sort of travel parallel paths. So I felt like this is really an opportunity for me to stand in that gap and see what is out there that I can bring into my organization, into my small space, or even the bigger, more broad organizational space that can help us to progress to where we want to be overall. And I just love, like, I love learning. I love reading and research. I love having those types of conversations. So I wasn't sure what I was going to be getting into in this doctoral program, but what I found is that I've had so much leeway to research and write about what I want to write about, and to really look at it through my own lens as a Black woman, a Black female scholar, as a police officer. Like there's just so many unique intersections that I bring to the work that it's really exciting for me. And also, again, I go back to kind of just feeling like I have that responsibility to be doing this work because I'm able to do it, confident and also capable and dedicated to the work. So I have the responsibility to sort of bring that not only for my police service, but my community, my family, just sort of everyone overall, and myself, because I really am a legitimate lifelong learner. Like if you're not gathering it so far, I do not stop, except for maybe when I sleep.
You do realize what you're doing though, right? You got your master's and your PhD. Now you're going to be telling your son, you need to further this legacy. What's the poor little guy going to do? Like, what do you do after that? Get 2 PhDs.
Yes. But you know what? The good thing for him is that I don't have any aspirations for him beyond him doing something, whatever it is, whatever the education is, whatever the profession is, that he commits to it and he does it well, and that it makes him happy in life. And it doesn't have to be a doctorate, a master's. I mean, that would be ideal, right? For him to at least get a BA, right? Just like the working environment that we're in now, that's sort of becoming the gold standard in a lot of workplaces anyways. And then upper management in a lot of professions is becoming a master's at least. So would I love him to do that? Absolutely. But I want to make sure that he does what makes him happy, but whatever it is that makes him happy, he's committed to, not just floating around and like, oh, I don't know what he could say that he's going to do that I'd be like, yeah, absolutely not. We're not doing that. You're going to school.
Well, when my oldest was 4.5 years old, like literally, 4 years old, because he was about to start JK, on his little sheet of paper where we said like, my name is blah, I'm 4 years old. When I grow up, I want to be Superman. He wanted to be Superman. So
hey,
there you go. We'll see what your little guy says in the fall. What if he says he wants to be a police officer? What would your reaction be?
Yeah, I'm good with that. You know, I'm good with that. And I hope that I will have been his entire life setting an example for him that he can follow, that he brings that same compassion and centering people to his work. And I would be, you know, very, very proud of him whatever he does, and certainly if he became a police officer.
Mhm. So you said something interesting before when you were talking about your academics and being able to fill that gap between the academics that look at policing and then the policing experts that look at policing. And it's interesting because I often see a similar gap when you just talk about like the public perception of policing. Like there's so many different narratives. What is it that you want people to know about that gap, that in between spot? Like, what do you want people to know about what policing is, who police officers are, who you are, that we haven't discussed yet?
Oh, that's a great question. I think about the gap is that we are much more similar than we are different, and that the gap is not as wide as we think it is, and that we just need to listen to one another, and really listen, not just hear, but like listen and take in everyone's perspectives and see that we really have an opportunity to work together, and that sometimes we get busy thinking like, okay, people who study the things, that's what they do. They don't know anything about actually doing them.
Mhm.
But there is really kind of, I say like a symbiosis between the two. Like we can pull the two together and really progress things. Like we're in a space now where the world has changed so much. We're being so much more is being demanded of us as police officers, and there are tools and there's information out there that we are very much seeking as an organization. But like there are things out there beyond what we've been doing for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, back to 103, 105 years ago when our police service was first established. Like there's a lot out there, and that we have to seek it. And no longer is it acceptable to kind of just do status quo and keep on doing the same things because that's the way they've always been done, because we're going to be left behind.
Mm.
Right. So I think that's really the big thing, in that, each of us individually within the police service, just like each of us in society, should look to ourselves as having some level of responsibility for progressing things in our organization and society more broadly. So there isn't as big of a gap between the two, and that it's really important for us to try and bridge that gap, not just between academics and police experts, but between policing and community, between older generations and younger generations. Like we're not that different, and we're not that far apart, and we should focus more on how we are similar and how that similarity can progress us, rather than focusing on our differences and why we can't do this or we can't do that.
Is that your why behind policing? When we spoke on the phone a couple of weeks ago, you want to talk about your why with policing. Is that it? Like bringing the community together, and like, what is it? What's your why?
Yeah, that's a really big part of it. My why is to help change that perception that the police are just this separate entity that don't care about people, that are focused on what they need to do, that are kind of on to the next one. Like I want people to know that so many of us, most of us, are super, super invested in connecting with the community and people doing well and supporting people. And we are human beings as well, and are not always perfect. And it's unfortunate that sometimes when we are falling short of that perfection is the one time we're having an interaction with a community member, and that's the interaction that they take away, and we don't have the opportunity to fix it. Right. So on the side of on the policing side, that's why it's so crucial that we try to bring our very best every single day, because we don't know if it will only be that one interaction. So yeah.
And why homicide for you? Why do you love it so much? What keeps you there?
Homicide, like I said, that being the person responsible for seeking justice for a person who now can no longer speak for themselves, who are the victim of a homicide, or the survivors, the people that they leave behind. There's no greater honor, in my opinion, for me than to be the person tasked with doing that. And I talked about just recognizing that when someone loses a loved one by the hand of someone else, that they have no recourse. Like they have to trust us that we're going to do a good job, and that we are going to work hard. And sometimes, most of the times, they're not talking to us every day. They don't know what we're up to. It may seem like we're not doing anything, but because I know that I have this responsibility to them, and I know that God forbid, I was in the situation, that I would want someone who was compassionate and cared and knew about me and knew about my family and was working hard even when they were tired and working relentlessly, no matter what the circumstance. Like that is the person that I want to be for them, and that I strive to be for the victims, their families, and certainly my colleagues around me, and they try to do the same for me. Like that is 100% the reason that I'm here. The work is amazing. The investigations can be really exciting in terms of just how they unfold, and you get something, like you've been just have nothing, and all of a sudden you get one thing and another thing and another thing and another thing, and then it's really satisfying from the standpoint of being an investigator, like that sense of accomplishment that goes alongside with that sense of sort of fulfillment, getting that justice for the family. I can't bring their loved one back, but what I can do when I have the opportunity is to bring some closure by taking the person responsible or persons responsible into custody.
I would love to be part of the Detective Sergeant Tiffany Castell huddle whenever the new recruits of constables in the training program come in, because they must just get so fired up after me. I know there's probably not a huddle. Maybe there will be now though, but like they must just get so fired up from your passion. And I know you're not the only one in the office like that. You work alongside many remarkable colleagues, but I just love that. So before we end this conversation, you mentioned that, not all your friends are police officers. You try to not just be, attached to policing all the time. And some of your friends, they let you be like weird Tiffany. So what's weird Tiffany? What do you do?
Tammy, we're not supposed to talk about this in the conversation, girl.
Hey, we did not talk about anything weird in our phone conversation. Now I'm like,
No,
you got
you know
me.
what? It's not even necessarily weird. I am very artsy. Like I love art. Anyone who works with me will tell you like about my nails or about like my colorful suits.
Let's see your nails.
I don't know if you can.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Pointy.
Do you do that? Do you do that?
No, I wish. I wish.
Okay. I'm not showing you my nails. They're shameful these days.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, just like these little things, and I like to have a good time, and I like to laugh and make jokes. I like to think that I am quite creative with different things, but I'm always envious of my colleagues who come up with really good pranks and things like that. I'm not as good. I'm not the ideas person, but I can like help you execute.
You can execute it. Yes.
Give me the directions. I can.
And you know what? You've got a 4.5-year-old son. So if you're not there, you will soon be there. And by there, I'm referring to fart jokes, poop jokes, everything. I've got an almost 4-year-old and I've got a 7-year-old. Those are my boys, and everything is poopy. Like everything is. Let's have my 7-year-old has declared a day in July to be poopy day. And we're expected to celebrate it. Like he picked a specific day next month. I don't know what's going to happen in this household. I'm kind of scared, but you've got all that coming. So you're just going to get weirder, my friend.
Yeah, this is perfect. I just love to have a good time, good laughs, be around other fun people who, you can just decompress and relax, allow you to be who you are. We
can let so much out through laughter and through tears. It's better when it's laughter, but it's just that it can be that catharsis, right? When you're carrying so much, you carry a very heavy load. You got to laugh it out, cry it out. Sometimes you got to cry it out, but laughing it out is great. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about, Detective Sergeant Castell, that you wanted to get in there?
No, it's been such a wonderful conversation with you, Tammy.
Tiffy, I hope I didn't disappoint. Next time I'm going to have to get Tammy Sutherland in here to make a cameo. I might bring up one of her pictures, like in one of the edits that I do.
Yeah, that's what you totally should do. Edit. Yeah.
She's going to get a kick out of it. I'm going to get her to like, when we were at CTV, they would give me these postcards of me smiling that I was expected to give out to people. Never gave them out. I'm going to get Tammy to get one of those. I don't know if they have them at City TV. Sign it, autograph to my biggest fan, Detective Sergeant Tiffany Castell.
At the Crime Stoppers there, so I was like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing. Like, wow, we're so fancy.
I know.
and then I get another Tammy. So I mean, really, and that's like 3 T's. And actually, partner Ted is a T. Two.
Ted
So
Ted Lumanis.
Yeah, we're big T and little T in the office.
Oh, I love that. Big T, little.
Yeah,
Are you
we do.
actually little? Are you short?
Yes, much shorter than he is. Like I'm like
How tall are you?
5'2".
Okay, I'm taller than you. I'm like 5. I say I'm 5'4 3/4. Actually, it might be 5'3 3/4. Like the 3/4 matters when I'm going back to back with my sisters.
Of
Because
course.
we argue over who's tallest, right?
Yeah. So we're
I
like
love it.
tall and small.
Big T and little T. I love
Yeah,
it. Well, little T, Detective Sergeant Little T, who, you know what, you're DS now, but in a couple of years, you're going to be DDS, Doctor Detective Sergeant,
my goodness.
or maybe you'll be DI by then. We'll see. Doctor Inspector. We'll see. I'm so excited to see what happens with your career. I can't wait for the next time that we chat, whenever that might be. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
Anytime, like we can do it again in half an hour. I'll give you a call.
Sure.
Okay.
Call me anytime.
Thank you.